Okay, so this is going to be sort of my perspective. Right now, you can just see my pedal board. We've got the guitar right here. And if things go bad, all of a sudden you're about to play a show, the curtain's about to go up or whatever, and you don't hear anything coming out of your amp. First thing I do is I look down, check out the guitar. So on a guitar like this, it's possible that you have the correct volume turned up, but you might have your toggle switch on the wrong pickup, and that one can be all the way down. That happens sometimes. People get confused, then all of a sudden they hit the dial and it turns on, it scares them. So that could happen, all right? So usually what I do is I keep both volumes up on a guitar like this with multiple volumes for pickups, okay? Check out that your output is plugged in. I know that seems really basic, but a lot of this stuff is. It's just in the heat of the moment. You can freak out and forget about the easy stuff. One time I was playing a show and a guy had his cable hanging like that. And he was about to play, nothing came out. His face kind of went white. I just pointed at the cable and he was like, oh, duh. Then his face turned red. But, anyways, make sure you're plugged in, okay? So that's really all you can do on a guitar when something goes wrong is really look at the dials, the switches, the output. And on my Jag, actually, I have a kill switch right about here on the guitar. And I was strumming and accidentally hit it downward. It's a weird design. I think I'm going to have it reversed or removed. But I just had to flick it back up and it worked. Now you can go to the pedal board. So remember, all this has to happen in the matter of seconds when you get really good at it. So the pedal board has a lot of issues that could happen. One thing is that is there even power going to it? So I like to check out, hit a couple pedals, make sure the lights come on. That means that the power supply is working, which is good. Then I check the input. This happens a lot where you plug in your guitar into the pedals. Sometimes that's just like that. Happened to me at First Avenue once, and I was freaking out. And this is all the problem was that. Okay. Then make sure your volume pedal is up. That can be another thing. Look at the output where the main output's coming out is on this pedal. So this is actually headed out to the amp. So make sure that's plugged in. And do an overall check of all the connection points. Another problem that can happen with pedal boards is that one of your pedals volumes is down. So if let's say you have your distortion turned on, your overdrive, but the volume is turned all the way down on this one, like let's say it's like that, you'll hit your pedal, you'll think it's broken, but really it's just that the volume is down. So make sure your volumes are up on all your pedals as well. Also, not with this tuner, but some Boss tuners and some other tuners that are pedal tuners, you hit them and it mutes your sound. Okay, not this one. We'll pretend this is one of those. So you hit it and you can tune, but it also mutes your sound. So make sure that that isn't engaged. That happens a lot. A lot of acoustic players have that problem. Speaking of acoustics, if we go back to the guitar really quick, if you happen to be playing an acoustic guitar and your sound goes out, make sure that it's not the tuning button. Sometimes you hit the tuner button on your acoustic and it mutes your guitar. So the same concept with that. If you're ever tuning and then you go to play and you have nothing coming out, it's because your guitar or your pedal's still muting your sound. There's a couple things on an amp that always seem to be the problem whenever the sound goes out or doesn't start up in the first place. Check the volume, but a lot of the times it's going to be the power or the standby. So let's check out the back of this amp really quick. If you're new to tube amps, you might not even know about standbys, but this amp has two switches right here. And so this one's the standby and this one's the power. So if the standby is down, it's going to look like the amp is on because all the lights and tubes are on, but you're not going to get any sound until you hit standby. A lot of the times that's the problem, is that the standby is off. So really check that out, okay? Turn it on, everything's solved. Sometimes you forgot to even turn on the amp. You know, that's rare, but that could happen too. And make sure it's plugged in, of course. So that's another thing that people forget. One time I went to play, and it was in such a hurry to set up that I went to play, I had nothing coming out. And I looked, I didn't even have the speaker cable connected to the cabinet. So if you have like a combo amp, this might not even be an issue, but if you have a head and a cabinet, make sure you have the speaker cable connected and plugged all the way in. That was kind of embarrassing. One more thing, just like the guitar, you could have the cable just sitting like that. That has happened to me before, so make sure this is plugged in. Also, this is sort of a side tip. I call it the wiggle test, and that's when you pull a cord out or put it in. Let's say it's still not working. I always kind of wiggle the cable because sometimes it's just a little connection problem, and that kind of gives you a hint if the cable's acting up or if you just didn't push it in all the way. Also, beware of partially placed cables like this. That's enough to just ruin your whole night, okay? So even just having it out just a little bit can be an issue. So really look for the details on that stuff. Okay, now let's say all that stuff was checked out. Nothing fixed the problem. It's getting pretty desperate now. What I like to do is I like to unplug from the pedal board. Remember, this is in an emergency now. I unplug, so it's just my guitar cable, which is kind of tangled up right now. And I go directly into the head. So I take out that main cable, put in just my guitar cable directly in, and then I try to play. Okay, if the sound works, that's a good sign. I mean, it does kind of suck. You won't be able to use your pedal board, but at least you know your guitar is working and you know the amp is working and your cable. So that you'll have to play the rest of the set or the show with just your head. Hopefully you have a channel selector on your head you could use. Have to bypass your pedals for this gig. If it doesn't work, let's say you did all that, you plugged right into your head, and all of a sudden you play, still nothing. And you've already done all the protocol up till that point, okay? You already checked all the switches and all the dials and everything like that. Well, then you have to assume it's your cable. So take out the cable, swap it with another one. If it works, it was the cable. That was the problem. That's a good fix because usually you can bring an extra cable, save the day. If you still get nothing after swapping a cable, then take your cable out, walk to your friend's amp. We'll just pretend this one's hooked up. It's not. Plug into that. See if it works, okay? If their amp works, it's kind of bad news. It means your amp is screwed. So your head or something went bad. So if that is the case, you'll learn quickly that it helps to bring a backup amp to shows. And I'll leave it to the side just in case you have to hook it up really fast. I just bring a small PV Bandit. And it's a solid state amp, but it does the trick in a pinch. And in emergencies, you'll grab for anything. You'll grab a practice amp if you have to. So that's when your amp goes wrong and you can't do anything about it at the show. So you're going to have to bail, like I said, and use a backup plan. During the break, you might be able to go in the back and see if there's any weird wires loose or anything. Be careful, though. You can electrocute yourself, so I shouldn't even advise that. But, that's a bigger problem that you'll have to deal with later. So let's say you unplug. You plug into your friend's amp. And their amp was just working for them, and you try to play and nothing's working. Now you have to assume your guitar is messed up, all right? So no longer is it any of the obvious stuff like your dials or, your plug-in or anything like that. Now we're talking swap guitars out if you brought it back up. It's huge to do that, by the way. And then during the break, you're going to have to open up this back part and tinker with some wires, see if something really bad happened, if there's, just some obvious torn wires. That's happened before. Some people leave the back of their guitars open and their belt buckles can pull on wires and stuff. Weird things happen. So just look out for that. So during your break, if it was your pedal board, by the way, go through each pedal and just kind of check each one, check the connections, the power supplies. Sometimes those aren't plugged in. That can be a problem. And then you could sort of do like you could sort of figure out which one it is just by taking each one and testing it, and hopefully have a long break. And then maybe you'll find the source of the problem, get rid of it, and just have to do without that pedal for the gig. Okay, hopefully this never happens to you, but I'm sure it will, and hopefully this helps out. Okay, guys, have a good one. Thanks.